Welcome back to the Pride to Detroit POD cast, continuing to break down preseason game two. I think we just got through all the biggest storylines. Now this is where we split along offense defense lines. And I feel like I need to start with the offense. And we're going to spend a lot of time here talking skill position players because suddenly everyone wants to keep everyone. Everyone's in love with the gritty guys who are showing up against second and third team defenses and not taking anything away from them. But this is the time of year, Jeremy, where I root for these guys to make the roster, and yet at the same time, I have to temper everything,
Yeah.
knowing that they're playing against lesser competition too. It's always the hard part of preseason is how do you differentiate them, and it's a job I usually leave up to the coaching staff, who is much smarter than I will ever be for any reason whatsoever. But everyone was ready to throw him out, even though he had a couple of nice plays. Now everyone is insisting that Tom Kennedy cannot go away. Is there any room for Tom Kennedy on the roster? Is there any room for him on the practice squad? Can we make sure he doesn't get poached if he goes to the practice squad? Tom Kennedy played his heart out this game, and he continues to play his heart out. And no, Tom Kennedy is the story.
Yeah, listen. He's a guy that I've fought against, not actively. I was just a guy that I couldn't figure out a way to I couldn't figure out a way to put him on the roster, right? Because up until this year, I viewed him as a very limited player. He's a guy who's a pure slot corner. He's kind of small. He's fast. He's fidgety. He's Khalif Raymond without the crazy speed and the punt return abilities. And the Lions already have a lot of that. But he's proven a lot to me in the past 2 weeks, really 3 weeks. His ascension is not a culminate. Like, I think in past years it's been like, oh, it's a meme. He's doing well against third stringers. Doesn't matter. He's a preseason all-star. He's stepped up in such a big way ever since Trinity Benson and Quintus Cephas went down with injuries for a while, in that he's playing on the outside more than he is on the inside now, in practice and in the game. He's doing things that I didn't think. The 2 touchdown catches he had were not like pure slants and things. They were like jump ball, go and get him, go beat a guy deep into the outside. They were things that outside receivers do. So he is adding to his game and getting better. And as Dan Campbell said after the game, they're like, okay, well, he's doing everything we ask him on offense. He's obviously not going to jump the top 4 receivers, so we got to find a way to make him a contributor on game days. So let's throw him out there at gunner. Let's throw him out there at jammer and see how he does. Got a handful of the special team snaps and didn't do horribly at it. So he's in. I'm making room for him, Chris. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm still kind of tossed up between whether it's going to be Quintus Cephas or Trinity Benson, because Quintus Cephas can't stay healthy. He's a much more unique skill set guy, and I think probably a better overall receiver than Trinity Benson is. But he can't, like, Ryan, throw your slogan in here, like availability.
Yeah,
Quintus Cephas doesn't have it right now.
I've had this sinking feeling, Ryan, that this entire offseason, Cephas' star has been dimming rapidly as more and more young guys start to fight for his spot.
Yeah, I think the offseason was pretty telling, though, in the way that the Lions approached it by, going out and getting a guy like DJ Chark, who, yeah, he's going to be a perimeter threat, but at the same time, they want to move. You want a guy who can move in and play the big slot role. Well, DJ Chark can do that too, especially now that, eventually the Lions will get JMO and things like that. But I guess my overall point is it seemed like the offseason moves that the Lions made at wide receiver made Quintez Cephas a little bit expendable in a way. And he certainly hasn't done anything to prove that he belongs on this roster because of what Jeremy just said in terms of his availability being his greatest detriment to him. Just not being out on the field and not getting the reps and not having the chance to show out against second and third stringers like Tom Kennedy has done now for a second week in a row. Because Jeremy, like you said, there's 4 guys that are locked in, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond.
Yep.
Like, those are your 4 guys. JMO's going to be on PUP. Where do you go from here? And it's this weird amalgamation of, well, Quintus Cephas is, like, he's shown it a little bit, but he's not really healthy enough. And Trinity Benson, maybe, I don't know. And then now all of a sudden a new guy shows up. Like there is Tom Kennedy, but I think that, for as much Tom Kennedy we need to talk, there's, I think, even a bigger storyline at wide receiver this week.
Yes, because I was going to say the one knock at Tom Kennedy is he's not right now doing special teams. He's not returning kicks. He's not returning punts.
He's not returning.
But
he's getting in there on special teams now. He's got
yeah, and we know he can play. We know he can play quarterback too.
That's very important. Emergency quarterback, it might be Tom Kennedy. But I think seriously, to that point though, Chris, like,
yeah,
we were concerned about, like, how do you find a spot for a guy on the 53-man roster whose only thing he's doing it well. It's no knock on him, but like, if you're only bringing your receiving skills to the table, how can I put you on the roster? Right?
At wide receiver 5 or lower, yes.
Right. So like, but like Jeremy, you pulled the quote from Dan Campbell in the post-game presser, like, we put him in at special teams. Like, we need to see this guy. Like, we want to give him every opportunity to make this team.
Yep.
So, yeah, but special teams are important, which segues to our next guy, right?
Chris, I was going to say, because
him.
Yeah, I this is a guy that was not on my radar at all, but Maurice Alexander very quickly made a name for himself in this game, guys, returning kicks.
Yeah.
So I think it might be a little too late for him, but too little too late. But Jeremy, where do we feel on Maurice Alexander?
This is a tough one because he is a guy that as soon as he landed in Allen Park, and he was a late addition, so he's had to really play catch up and make an impression quick. He's looked like a very natural returner to me, and so the Lions got an entire game's worth of returns from him, both on kick returns and punt returns. I don't think he did great as a punt returner, but he did really good as a kick returner, and so now. I know he's a wide receiver, but I think like the roster spot you're debating here is Godwin Igwebuike's. And I know we haven't talked about the running backs yet, but we will. But like Godwin Igwebuike is your kick returner, has been your kick returner, has not done basically any special teams this preseason. And I think that's just because they want to try everyone else out there. And it almost seems unfair to Godwin to be like, okay, but can't I rebut? Can't I remind you guys how good I was as a kick returner? Because he was like 4th in kick return average last year. He never had any flashy ones, though. And so that to me is at the crux of the Maurice Alexander debate. Do you want someone who is potentially really good as a kick returner? He showed it in the USFL. He's hitting the ground running because he's been playing in the spring and all that sort of stuff.
He's warmed up already, man. He played a bunch of games just a few months ago.
The converse of that is, how is he going to look in December? That's a lot of freaking football. And so that's something that I think you really do have to kind of keep in mind. But the bigger debate for me is, do you want someone who can potentially be a really, really good returner over someone who can be a good to above an average to good special teamer in all 4 phases? Not only kick off, but kick return, kick coverage, punt, like not Trinity Benson. Godwin Igwebuike does all that stuff. And so, and he looked pretty darn good as a running back too, and had some good runs last year too. I know the fumbles are still fresh in everybody's mind, but I think Godwin's a little bit more of the well-rounded guy who can do more on game days and kick. Like, if you have a good kick returner and everyone knows it, everyone can just kick it through the end zone. So I just, like, to me, kickoffs aren't big enough for me to give Maurice Alexander a roster spot, but he's making it hard.
Yeah, I think where it gets interesting, right, is the Lions have somebody in a punt returner in Khalif Raymond, right? Like, I think I think he's their guy when it comes to punt returns, but can you? I think you articulated it well, Jeremy. Like, can you rationalize using an entire roster spot on just a kick returner? And the answer is probably no. But at the same time, like preseason game 1, right? Trinity Benson is the guy who's back there to start kick returns. Yep. That was clearly that wasn't an indication. I think a lot of us maybe jumped the gun and thought, oh, that's an indication of the Lions really like this guy to be, the kick returner. When really, I mean, he didn't do much to impress there. Now Maurice Alexander gets this opportunity in preseason game 2. He does impress with, a 61-yard return and then another big return that he gets to set up the Lions in good field position. Now, it'll be interesting to see what they do in game 3. Do they want to see, like, oh, was that just a flash in the pan with Maurice? Or do they give Godwin a chance in game 3.
To remind
you know?
everybody, yeah.
Right. I don't know. It's interesting, that cross section, because I think I see the returners as Khalif Raymond, Godwin Igwebuike, and Maurice Alexander. How do those 3 guys end up, I think, in one roster spot?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be fascinating because I feel like Godwin, at least on his primary role, which is what we're about to talk about right here, as running back, has had his stock dropping significantly, and it's led to a lot of questions of who RB3 and 4 are. And I think Craig Reynolds at this point is still a lock to make the roster. But talk about another late comer into Lions camp here, Justin Jackson, formerly of the Chargers, and one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. I think he played very well in this preseason game, and I like what he brings to the table, and I'll be curious to see if there's any chance he can maybe make the roster here. I again, what Godwin Igwebuike brings to the table in special teams keeps him valuable, but the more he gets pressured by guys like Tom Kennedy and Maurice Alexander, I think that'll be interesting to see who if that stays true, especially with the competition now at RB3 and 4.
Yeah, it's another kind of mess there, and Dan Campbell would say it's a good mess. Like, the fact that these decisions are getting harder is a sign that your roster is getting deeper and better, and I think that's true. Like, just considering where this team was in terms of their running backs, their wide receivers, we haven't even gotten to tight ends, but tight ends is now getting a little bit complicated too. I still like Godwin a little bit better, but yeah, like the question that you always have to come back to is, okay, this guy might be a better run, like Justin Jackson might be a better running back than Godwin Igwebuike, but does that matter? Does that matter? Because none of those those guys aren't gonna be cutting into carries of your RB1 and your RB2.
Well, unless something really bad happens,
yeah. Right? But it's also worth saying, like, those are positions that notoriously have a lot of injuries, and can DeAndre Swift stay healthy? All those things are important to keep in mind, but which one? Like, Justin Jackson is a guy who was jobless a month ago. Like, could you stash that on your practice squad? Probably, right? Unless he like pops off for 100 yards in the final preseason game, I'm not sure people are going to be scouring the waiver wire for him.
He's still young too. He's 26, but I also think like Jermar Jefferson did not have a good game either. So
Jermar Jefferson has work to do. Like,
a lot of work.
He's kind of in this weird situation where, like, last year I thought he looked pretty good as a running back, did not look good on special teams. Now those two have flipped, in my opinion. He looks like the worst running back on the roster on offense, but he actually was kind of responsible for sparking both of those kick returns. So, and that was the thing he focused on. So he's making it tough in that sense, but I still think Godwin has him beat handily in terms of, if you're just talking special teams value. So I don't know how Jermar necessarily makes the team in that way.
I mentioned this. I think Jermar, like, he gets the ball in his hands and it looks like he has a lot of juice. It's just he seems indecisive. He seems like he's maybe trying to do a little too much.
Yep.
It seems like he probably needs to rely on Deuce Staley to give him some good coaching and be like, dude, you just need to like hit here and here, because he's basically the antithesis of Craig Reynolds. And the reason why we all seem so locked in on Craig Reynolds is, like, the guy just finds the hole, hits it. He's good for like 6, 7, 8 yards maybe, but he's going to get tackled. He's going to get dragged down because he doesn't have that like escape speed that some of these other guys I think do have. Like, Justin Jackson has he has the escapability. Like, he has, I think he's got the vision. And that's why I think, like, maybe it's kind of wrong to presume that like Craig Reynolds is just RB3. Like, I like him as RB3. I just think that they're totally up for whoever they can get to be that guy. I think it's still up in the air. Yeah. Like, I don't think it's settled. Like, I think Craig Reynolds is the leader in the clubhouse, but Justin Jackson got here late, and I would say that he was the best runner on Saturday. So
that doesn't count.
Justin Jackson's had plenty of flashes in the past with his time with the Chargers.
And he's got the resume, right? Like, that's the important thing. Like, he has a body of work that you can point to and say, this guy belongs in the NFL.
Yes, absolutely. It's just that he's had that time off because he was, I think, he got cut. I think, what was it, week? Like, I'm trying to remember the last time he played. It was like late last year.
He helped me win my fantasy league, so I love Justin.
I love following him on Twitter for various reasons I don't think I can really say here. But This is just we could talk for another 30 minutes on running backs. It is probably the most intriguing position right now for the Lions. Just on how much is tied up in there, how many utility men they have here, the kind of positions that are opened up because of various roster consternations. But we'll have to put a pin in.
Ultimately, tight ends don't matter, or running backs don't matter, right?
God.
You are so annoying sometimes. You are just so annoying sometimes. Let's go to a position that I'm sure you don't think matters either. Tight end. So once again, I don't know where to really go with this. James Mitchell, we got his first taste out there, and I wasn't too impressed, but at the same time, we know the extenuating circumstances of James Mitchell, but I feel that it does kind of open up the door a little bit to Shane Zylstra, who, again, for those who don't remember, like, this was a guy that Dan Campbell mentioned by name a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And I think still remains in contention for one of those tight end spots. It's just, I don't know. James Mitchell out there, I don't think anything's going to change. They have invested in James Mitchell. I think he's still probably in TE3 behind Brock Wright, but it does open the door between him, Shane Zylstra, I cannot say that fast, and maybe keeps the embers glowing for all the Devin Funchess fans in the room.
Yeah, that stock seems to have sold completely for. I think people have just forgotten about Devin Funchess because he got injured this week. But he'll be back for that third preseason game. I get it. I get the strong feeling he'll be back and kind of re-enter the conversation. But to me, it's tough, right? Because Shane Zylstra gives you more now, whereas James Mitchell could give you more later, and that becomes a tricky debate. Maybe you just keep both to have both of those
carry four tight ends?
Yeah. It's not unheard of, and I think the fact that Jason Kabinda could very well start the regular season on the PUP list, that might be the roster spot that allows you to do something like that, right? So then once Kabinda comes back, you can say, okay, well, I think James Mitchell is ready now, so let's let Zylstra go, or let's let Funchess go. But yeah, I think that's where I'm leaning towards, is because Zylstra has shown a lot of improvement, man. He was one of the big, Ryan mentioned it at the top, one of those tight ends he's been repping very high in practice. I thought he was the key block in a lot of those big runs yesterday. And so I have a hard time taking him off the roster because I feel like he could be a contributor in week 1, whereas I'm not sure James Mitchell is there yet. But I don't think we're ready to give up on James Mitchell and throw him to the waiver wire. I think that'd be a little reckless. So I'm leaning more towards 4 tight ends right now. I don't think Devin Funchess is in the conversation yet. One good preseason game ain't gonna cut it. Three catches for 15 yards or whatever it was. But
a touchdown.
But a touchdown, yeah, that's great. I mean, I love you, Michigan fans. I'm just not there yet with Funchess.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I want to just capitalize is, I think James Mitchell very well could be tight end 4 to start the season. Yes. And they go Shane Zylstra, tight end 3, Brock Wright, and TJ Hawkinson. I totally see that being a path to week 5, right? When maybe Kabinda's healthy and ready to go. And then, like you said, they make that switch. But I think it's pretty clear. I think the Lions need to have Shane Zylstra on this team.
He was good.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's really about it for the offense. I know we talked a lot of offensive line in
the only tricky thing for me is with the offensive line is I really want to find a spot for Logan Stenberg, and I just don't know where it's coming from. He had such a good game, and as I said on Twitter, I think some of it is just playing next to Evan Brown, and I think Evan Brown is going to be a starter in the league next year somewhere. But we all know Logan Stenberg's whole personality and the smaller type. We know Dan Campbell is going to love him as a person, and the fact that he's finally healthy and his game appears to be turning around a little bit, it's hard not to want to reward that. But right now I don't have a roster spot. I don't know where his roster spot's coming from.